So here we go. All right, welcome to the 11 o'clock hour of the Real World Wednesday Career Speaker Series. I'm Dustin Seaton, the Gifted and Talented Specialist at the Northwest Arkansas Education Co-op.
Hi, good morning. I work with Dustin. I am the Science Specialist at our teacher co-op.
And y'all are in for a treat today because we have a whole list of amazing career professionals, especially our next one, Miss Ashley Dudek. She's an architect at HOK. And I'm sure that stands for something. I don't know exactly offhand. Ashley, do you want to do a better introduction for yourself?
Yeah. I work at HOK, so we're a worldwide architecture engineering firm. We do every kind of building imaginable, everything. I specialize personally in sports architecture, so I do collegiate sports, professional sports. We have people in our office who specialize in healthcare, so they do hospitals. We have people who do education, so schools, university buildings, rec buildings, all that fun stuff. So we literally do every kind of project type. But I am personally situated in Kansas City. So here in Kansas City, it's actually, interestingly, a little bit of a sports design mecca of the world, really. If you think about any sports building, is probably designed out of Kansas City, which is kind of fascinating. Even the Olympic buildings themselves are, the Tokyo Olympics were designed from a firm in Kansas City. So
there are several architectural firms that y'all are competing with for these bids.
Exactly.
Wow.
So it all started, there's an interesting history. It all really started with the design of the Chiefs Arrowhead Stadium and the Royals ballpark. They're right next to each other. And historically, sports architecture was always designed by engineers, and they thought, well, what if we put a little bit more thought into it and make it more than just a structure? Let's make it a unique design. And so they started off with an architecture firm, and then it just keeps multiplying and spawning, where now the world's largest sports architecture firms are here in Kansas City. So
that's awesome. And
yeah.
So one of my favorite things to do in my family is we try to go to all the sport venues, the stadium tours, things like that. What are some of the big projects that you've done that maybe some of our students or teachers watching will have known or recognized?
Yeah, so for the past, 7 years, really, I have been working on the United Center renovation. So that's in Chicago. That's where the Chicago Bulls play and the Chicago Blackhawks play. And then they have a multitude of concerts every year. So really my focus has been renovating that. It was built in 1996. It was built for Michael Jordan. If kids know Michael Jordan, hopefully.
Of course,
Yeah, of course. The building was built specifically for Michael Jordan's era because he was obviously the best, and it was the biggest arena at the time. And my boss designed it as a young designer just out of college. It was his first big project. And 30, 20 years later, it's time for a renovation. So I've been working on that. Specifically the locker rooms, some different restaurants within the arena. We did a huge addition to it. So it's been an evolution, and we're still working on it now.
And I imagine you'll have to do it in pieces because you can't just shut it down entirely.
Yeah, it has to remain open for business. Chicago Bulls don't take a season off, so you have to do little piece by piece. And then you couple that with Chicago Blackhawks, who have a different, hockey's on a different schedule than basketball. And I thought it was really interesting. My first year of working with them, the Chicago Blackhawks actually won the Stanley Cup. So their season was really long, which meant our building time became really short because their season obviously extended to the postseason. So it was really exciting to watch them play. It was really stressful for us to try to complete construction after the season.
We had one question from a student already that asked, do you get to go on site a lot to those locations, or do you do most of your work remotely?
It's been really different since COVID. Fortunately, I am grateful that our our office kind of took a step back and said, we're going to slow down traveling. So I haven't traveled too much this past year, but in the past, yes, I am always out on the construction site. I was in Chicago, so I'm based out in Kansas City, Missouri. I was in Chicago every other week, checking construction, presenting to the client, coordinating with engineers and other designers. So there's a lot involved to get a space up and running. Lots of travel. I had a lot of Southwest points, fortunately.
So like when you talk about like designing in this stadium, like needing a little bit of a renovation or an update, is that something that you guys would go in and make that suggestion, or is it like, do you have to get a bid for that? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, so originally it started with, so the United Center, for example, had been around for a long time. They were looking at people, they knew it was starting to look a little dated, right? And there's a lot of competition between teams and venues. Everybody wants to be the coolest.
Mhm.
So, so they put out an interview for designers, asking people what their thoughts were and what they would propose to do in the future. So we took a step back and looked at the arena altogether, and we said, okay, first we would do this project, then that's going to trickle into all these projects. Well, 14 years later, we're still doing projects for them because we're doing it piece by piece. So then we do that, and I can actually, let me see if I can share my screen real quick. I'll pull up something that kind of shows that progression. You guys mind if I share?
Yeah, go
absolutely.
forward.
Okay.
We know that in architecture, y'all are very visual and mathematical.
We are. Okay. Let me show you this. Okay. You guys see that?
Yep.
Okay. So this was one of the first meetings we were at the United Center, and you can see this was, gosh, back in 2014. So we're in an old ballroom type space projecting onto a screen, like very old school, not set up, not technology advanced. Obviously it needs a refresh. So we're there, we've got the arena up on the screen here, and we've picked, you can kind of see little spaces that we're saying, okay, this we want to update, this we want to update. Also in the room, we've got representation from both sports teams, and then we're also working with the food service provider who, for example, plans out the food and the menus for all the spaces, which has a lot to do with the events in an arena. If you think about it, you go there, you get food, you get drink, and you watch the game, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully they win.
So a portion of your job too is not just the architectural and design, but the presentation. You have to get up and sell the product.
Always, we always say that architecture is kind of the merger of science and math and art together. But at the end of the day, it's all communication too. English and written language. I mean, we're all sending emails and having meetings and presenting. It's all so important. So yeah, presenting is a big part of what we do. We have to sell our design. We have to convince somebody to build it.
Yeah, you could be the best architect in the world, but if you can't communicate it effectively, it doesn't do justice.
Yeah. And we're not paying for it. I mean, these are millions of dollars that somebody else is paying for. So then, for example, in this project, we did a series of renderings that you can see set up on the easels here, and then we go out to press for it. So United Center, they want people to understand these are the renovations that they're going to be tackling. They want everybody in the public on board. So, what it's showing here is a series of renovations that we were proposing for them, and additions to the United Center. So we had a little press conference. A lot of times the mayor of Chicago will attend. There's some politicians involved. There's, with these public projects, there's lots of groups. So then, we go through this long design process. We work with the client, we work with engineers, but ultimately, it starts construction, and like day one starts to look like this. It's just a bunch of dirt in the ground, and it's this overwhelming feeling. You can see the Chicago skyline there in the back. But day one, you're hoping that you made all the right decisions on your drawings because they're getting started. The other thing is, we're talking about going a lot to the construction site. This is what it looks like. A lot of the time you're going out there with your hard hat and your vests and checking on construction, making sure everything is going as planned. And there's a lot of work that we do with the contractors to get it up to speed and make sure everything's going properly. And then the finished product hopefully looks something like this.
That's amazing.
So this was the Chicago Bulls locker room, which as a kid of the 90s, it was a total dream job for me. Growing up as a fan of the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, always a fun time.
And so do you have to be an expert too in like lighting and electrical aspects when you're doing your designs?
Yeah, so I think we know enough to be dangerous, is what I say. Fortunately, we have like a big team of people we work with. So we work with lighting designers, we work with mechanical engineers who design the HVAC system for air conditioning and heating, electrical engineers to do the power outlets and everything that needs the power feed. So there's a ton of coordination with a really large project team. Another view, so they have a game day locker room, and then they have a practice locker room. So similar looks, but actually a little bit different setup. And then, we think about everybody's experience as they come through the space, and we wanted the team to get like really amped up whenever they're going out for a game. So we tried to make it like very moody, and when they're coming, this is the door when they're coming out of the locker room to the arena. So we really wanted to like pump them up.
Yeah.
Full of energy. And then there's other spaces, and the arena is a huge space. So this is actually a restaurant for the Chicago Bulls. If you were a season ticket holder, you could come in here. And again, we wanted to reflect some of that energy as you're coming in and out of the space. So following the motif of the Bulls colors, and just making it a fun experience.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And before the renovations, this was just storage space, so it was empty shell. Another look at that. You can start to see, we also work with graphic designers. So you can start to see kind of that bull head in the back on the wall, really tying everything in together. So my favorite story is I got to meet Scottie Pippen. Yeah. And if anybody has watched like The Last Dance, it's obviously heavily featured as Michael Jordan's second-hand man. But it was one of the coolest experiences to meet Scottie Pippen and watch a Chicago Bulls game with him.
So is he still active in the Bulls?
Yeah. He goes to all of the games still. He's still very active, goes to all the events. So he's a great mentor for some of the younger players.
And he's from Arkansas, just throwing that out there.
He is from Arkansas, you're right. He's a very cool, very humble, nice guy.
But are you like hanging out with him in these like really fancy VIP areas because you helped design them?
Yeah, so we were in the owner's suite.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So when you work on a project for 7 years, you get to know the client really well. The owner of the Chicago Bulls is a really fantastic family, great people to work with, and obviously.
And do they own the building itself, or is it owned by the city?
It's different for each project. For the Chicago arena there, it's a joint venture between the owner of the Bulls, the Blackhawks, and then like the United Center itself.
Okay.
But for example, the Chicago White Sox, the baseball team there, the state of Illinois actually owns the ballpark, and the White Sox are a tenant and
Gotcha.
rent the space, if you will. So. And then this is just like part of our design team. So we were there for the opening. We had moved the Michael Jordan statue into a new atrium that we built. And there was a grand opening with the mayor and a lot of politicians from around the state. And it was a really fun time. Obviously the press was there. But it takes a whole team to get these projects done. I mean, it's a multi-person sport for sure.
Yeah.
And then we like to have fun too. So, you know, we go to our clients, obviously fundraising, and they have a lot of work that they do outside of sports. And so we try to support them in that. And this is just part of the team that worked on the Chicago Bulls. I mean, my boss is the one in the center, and definitely a fun time. So this was for the Bulls' 50th anniversary. So we like to have fun too. You work hard, play hard.
That's right.
So we've got some questions from
Please.
Brightfield Middle School in Bentonville, 6th grade science class. They said they want to know if you always wanted to be an architect, and do you have any famous role models?
Oh, I like that question.
Wow, that's a great question. Yes, I always wanted to be an architect. You know, it started when I was around 6th grade. My family wanted to build a house on my grandparents lived out in the country, and my parents wanted to build a house out there so we could live closer to our family. So I remember my parents gathered a bunch of floor plans from a builder, and you almost had like a catalog to choose from. And I remember flipping through that catalog, looking at all the floor plans, thinking, okay, this is going to be my bedroom. This is going to be my sister's bedroom. This is going to be my parents'. And then thinking about how I would redesign it for our family. Like, okay, I want my bathroom here. Just thinking about all those little details about how people would work together in a house got me started thinking about, okay, well, I can redraw this and they can build it that way and it'll be fine and it'll be better than what they've done. And so that got me interested in architecture. And then ever since then, I was always interested in math. I really loved geometry class. I would say I'm not the best artist, but that's always something that you can practice at. And you know, just continuing to draw and get better at drafting, and it's, you know, a learned skill. I mean, everything is, as long as you continue learning, I think that you can do anything you want.
Well, and kind of piggyback off that, earlier before we started, you said you went to the Oklahoma State University, but one of our students asked, how long have you been an architect, and what are the qualifications you would need to become an architect? Thanks, Briley, for that question.
Yeah. Here, let me pull up something else. So to become an architect, there's a lot of things involved. I'll pull up. So to become an architect, I have been practicing, gosh, it's 15 years now.
Wow.
Don't do the math on how old I am. Yeah, I went to Oklahoma State University. I'm originally from Oklahoma, a proud cowboy, go Pokes. And I loved it, but it was really, really hard. And I knew it was going to be really hard going in. People told me, you're never going to sleep in college. You're not going to have any fun. And I was like, that's okay, because this is like my dream job. Like, that's what I want to do. And if it's going to be hard work, that's okay. So I did not sleep in college and worked really hard. It's a 5-year degree, so it's a professional degree. Some universities, like K-State, for example, they have a 5-year master's degree. I have a 5-year bachelor's. Arkansas also has an architecture school there. But So you go to university for 5 years. And then once you graduate, you intern for 3 years on top of that, and then you can start to take a series of exams. And then once you pass your exam, you become a licensed architect. So, so yeah, you can see it takes a professional degree to complete, and then once you pass your exams, you're good to go. Now, there's a lot of people who don't complete their licensing and they still work. It's just a technicality of an office.
So that 3 years that you do an internship, is that like a paid internship, or and you're working like a full-time job, but maybe under someone else?
Yeah. You're working a full-time job. You get paid, and the only thing you have to do is you quantify all of your hours. So let's say I worked on drawing construction documents for 5 hours a day. I have to log that, and then you have to complete kind of each task of hours to complete your hours for the 3 years. So they want to make sure you're not just doing pretty drawings for 3 years and never getting into like details and stuff. So
It's actually a really great, I think, model professionally, right? To like intern under someone who knows, what they're doing, and then go out on your own.
School is so important, but you learn in kind of this closed vacuum. Like, I'm working by myself on my school projects and everything's going great. And then when you get to the real world, it's completely different. And you're making mistakes every day and you're learning new things, and there's nothing that compares to like the real world experience.
Right. I completely agree with that. Like, I think, as teachers, we graduate teachers and then we throw them in a classroom, right? And they have a year of internship, but I mean, you learn when you're doing it, right? And that's what I think makes the first year teaching so hard. So I love that model. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's important. And there's a lot of universities that actually will have internships while you're going to school too, which I think is, those graduates come out of school like so prepared for the real world.
Right.
Cincinnati is one of them, where you go to school for a semester, then you go work in a city for a semester, then you come back to school, and it's a lot of back and forth. Yeah.
You've gotten at least 3 or 4 different questions about how much do you love your job? And Anna, Emma, Gabriella, they asked the same version of something like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your job?
Oh dear. Okay, so that's a complicated question. It matters on the day.
Yeah.
I would say what I love about my job is that every single day is different, right? So one day I'm going to be doing a presentation for a client and showing them, for example, I've got all kinds of finishes, and for K-State we have like custom things made, and we tell them, okay, this is going to be the leather on your sofa, and this is going to be your countertop, and pulling different things. I think all of that's really fun. And then it's great, and I love like working with people. My least favorite part is construction documents, when we're drawing details, and it's just a lot of computer work, and you have to make sure everything you've done makes sense, because somebody's going to take your drawing and go build it. Ooh. And any mistakes you make really come to life when it's getting built. So so you really got to be on your game. But I think like on a scale of 1 to 10, I love my job. I can't imagine doing anything different. I will say, like, it can be long hours, especially when you're on a deadline and you're working towards that deadline. My last deadline, I was working on Kansas State University. We're working on their football stadium. And the night before our deadline, I was working till like 2 a.m.
Wow.
So it can be long hours, but it's because you want everything in the construction documents to like look good, because once the contractor starts building it, you don't want to look like you made a ton of mistakes. So you want everything buttoned up and you want to look smart.
And Carter from Benville is asking, have you ever done a project that you put a lot of time and energy into it and they didn't ultimately go with it? Like they turned it down or they went a different direction?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that does happen sometimes. And a lot of the time, for example, I was just working on a project here in Kansas City, and it was actually a university for performing arts. So the concept was they were going to teach musicians how to get into the music profession. They were going to teach people who wanted to get into concert lighting design or like band performances. It was a really cool project, and it was massive, and we spent so much time on it and so much effort, and then the funding didn't go through.
Oh.
So it was privately funded and the client didn't get the proper loans in order. So then it went on hold for a long time. And then suddenly we got the note that the client was going to hire a different architect because they wanted to start fresh with some new ideas. So it hurts, but it's okay. I'm excited to see what they end up doing.
Yeah. So which is such a good attitude, because sometimes we don't get chosen, right? Or they go with someone else and it stings. But what a great outlook to still, be rooting for the other guy, right? We still want them to be successful. And
yeah, totally.
So what would you, because there was a question about like maybe how your team, like how you work as a team, or do you find yourself working on your own more often? Is there a team? Do you have people that you are in charge of, or just working as a whole team together? And what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a team sport. So on any project, no matter what the size, there's almost always multiple people on the team. So for example, I'm usually the main like client contact for a project. And so then I've got support staff with me, younger staff who are interning or learning more. They're doing a lot of the putting the presentation together. So renderings, we do a lot of 3D renderings and visualizations, putting that together. And then outside of that, we've got people who are, and everybody thinks differently. So we've got people who are more technical, who prefer to, let's say, be a little bit more science technically oriented. We've got people who are a little bit more artistic and they like the upfront conceptualization design. And then, we've got people who are just like really great at getting stuff done. And so it takes all of us together to get a project done. And then outside of just the architecture group, we've got engineers, we've got lighting designers, we've got landscape designers. Our teams are always massive to really get the project over the finish line. So there's a lot of coordination.
Right. And it has to be a lot of trust and a lot of communication between other people, right? I mean, because these are big deals and you want them to follow kind of what you said earlier. Someone else is putting together maybe your idea.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like trusting other people is like one of the hardest things for me. Delegating.
Right.
I would love to do all the work myself, but that's not possible. Right. So I have to trust other people to do it and do it properly.
Right. And that is tough. I think that's tough for a lot of our kids too sometimes.
It's hard. I mean, group projects are hard, right?
But also so necessary. I mean, it's how we get some of the best stuff accomplished.
Yeah.
But it is tough.
It's really hard.
Mrs. Nations in Prairie Grove wanted to know, what year did you work on the United Center?
So I have been working on the United Center since 2014 and almost every year since then, continuing on.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So in between that, I've been working on a bunch of other projects. My last project that just opened was Kansas State University's new south end zone to their football complex. Um, right now I'm doing a volleyball arena and locker room for them, an Olympic training facility for Kansas State, and then an indoor football practice facility for K-State. So we've been really busy at K-State. My office is working on a new hockey arena for Calgary, Canada.
Wow.
Gosh, I just completed, it's under construction right now, but the football practice facility for Auburn University, which is going to be amazing.
We don't like him, but okay.
Yeah, I know. The SEC, well, the SEC is its own beast where everybody has to compete with each other. So Auburn wanted to make sure and outdo Florida and Alabama and Georgia. So
have to.
You have to.
We have a student, Kane, has asked, what's your favorite project or building that you've worked on?
Oh man, favorite. I know we keep going back to it, but I really love working with the United Center just because it's been like a full evolution. And I've gotten to do so many different types of spaces in there. I love working in what's called hospitality design. So that's like restaurants, bars, clubs. I think it's really fun because you get to do unique materials and lighting, and it's a little less rigid than some other project types. A lot of designers do, for example, like office spaces or classrooms. And classrooms and office spaces are all kind of very similar. So there's not a lot of, I would say, creativity involved. But when you do hospitality, obviously a restaurant wants to be completely different than any other type of restaurant.
Right.
The other really cool project that I've been working on is esports is this new frontier in, let's say, sports design, where we're doing a lot of esports stadiums, esports gaming, restaurants, esports clubs. So that's been the new thing that I've been learning, is this whole new world of gaming.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So we're doing an arena that's set up just for video gaming and performances. I mean, the performances are amazing.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the next question I had, why is this the one job you liked most? What would you change of your job if you could, about your job if you could?
I really, it's all about relationships in the end. You can be a great designer, and if you are not great at communication, or if you're not great at managing relationships, that it's not going to go well. And I think I loved working on the United Center because our relationship with the owner of the Chicago Bulls, our client contact for the United Center, is just so great. Like, I consider them friends at this point. We follow each other on Instagram, or we talk about traveling. We're like friends outside of work.
Yeah.
So that's always helpful. I think, networking and relationships and communication is just so important to any career. That's what makes it special. I've definitely had clients who have been difficult to work with, or didn't like anything that you were showing them, or didn't trust you that your opinion was right, and it makes it really hard. And just having that positive relationship with the client is really important. If I could change anything about the career, we talk about it being necessary to be great at science and math, but really it's a service that you're providing to a client. So I'm a little bit like in the service industry, I have to, make the client happy. So unfortunately, sometimes that leads to long hours that I mentioned. And, we always want to, there's so much competition. We want to make the client happy. So you're under a lot of pressure to get stuff done quickly, or meet their expectations. For example, I worked with the Chicago White Sox, and the World Series just ended. The White Sox did pretty well, but now they're thinking about all the renovations they want to do now that the season is over, and we have to manage their expectations. Like, okay, well, March is only a few months away at this point.
Right.
We've got a global pandemic that is like shutting down our port, so we're not getting a lot of materials into the United States, which is making construction timelines really difficult. And having to break them the news that what they want to do might not be possible this time around. So
is the customer always right in your profession?
It's definitely trended that way for a long time, with the pandemic, and telling them that you can't get your cheapest material from China right now overnight. We're getting a little bit of leverage back. We're pumping the brakes on the timeline. For a long time, after the recession of 2008, there was just like so much buildup and competition still from being slow in the construction industry that you would basically do whatever they wanted. If a client wanted a renovation overnight, you were going to do it because everybody wanted the business. And now we're like almost on the opposite side of that, where the pandemic has forced people to slow down, and it's actually been kind of nice.
Yeah, I bet. We'll take any kind of goodness to come out of the pandemic, right?
Plus, I get to work from home. I'm still at home right now.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Even better.
Yeah.
So Ashley, this is kind of just wrapping up with our last question here. If you could go back in time, what is some advice that you would give your 12-year-old self, just in regard to school, or listening better to your teachers, or just overall 12-year-old self? What advice would you give?
Is listening better to your teachers a plug that the teachers put in there?
Yeah.
Dustin
probably
wrote that question, so you can ask him that.
I think it's just like listening to what you're interested in. It's impossible. I think it's like such a big problem with our education system. I don't need to get on a soapbox, but it's a problem to try to understand what you're interested in at such a young age, or even coming out of high school trying to pick a major it's impossible.
Right.
But trying to take like little clues from yourself about what you're naturally good at, what you can work on. I mean, you can learn anything. I mean, if I can learn to draw something well, then and you can do anything. But stay curious and stay interested. I mean, there's a big world, and the more you can travel and observe other cultures and other people, I just feel like it's so important to just observe and learn from other things, because I can do calculus and I can do geometry and trigonometry, and that's all great. But I think the most I've learned is just being a student of the world, and travel as much as you can, because there's a great big world outside of here, outside of Arkansas, outside of Oklahoma. It was important to me once I graduated from school to get out of the region, right? So I moved to Washington, D.C. for 8 years because I wanted to challenge myself, and I wanted to get away from my parents and experience something totally new. And I went and studied abroad in France for a summer, and that was really great. I don't know any French, so I did not do well in my classes. But I got to learn something completely different, a new culture, and I got to live in Versailles, and it was amazing. And just being able to travel, I think, changed the trajectory of my life more than anything.
That's awesome.
I love that. I'm a big fan of travel. We've heard from speakers this morning saying similar things, like be open, be willing to make mistakes and learn from them. But I think travel is a big one, just because it expands your horizons, exposes you to new cultures. and definitely builds up on your divergent thinking. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah. In design, especially, each culture in each region design stuff differently because the climate is different, the people are different, people use spaces differently, and being able to learn all those different techniques kind of becomes part of your toolkit that you gather from everybody around you and makes you a bigger and better person.
I love
Well,
that.
Ashley, thank you so much for giving us your time and your professional career advice. We definitely have learned some things, and I know the chat has been blowing up with things like you're so cool and you have the coolest job, and so we didn't get to hit all the highlights for those right now. But
it is a cool job. For example, one of the really cool things, we do a lot of publications in design. I have to brag on one of my good friends from Auburn. She just got published in Interior Design magazine, so she's on the cover.
Nice.
So I have like famous friends, right? But that's the other thing. I mean, we talk about staying curious, get magazines, look through them, see what you like, what you don't like. I mean, never stop exploring.
Yeah, and that's a great mantra for life in general.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on behalf of all of us at the Northwest Arkansas region and education, thank you for being our 11 o'clock keynote speaker. For those students that are joining us for the 12 o'clock, we will be back at 12. If you joined us late or missed part of Ashley's speech, we are recording it. It is live on our our Northwest Arkansas Education Service Co-op page on Facebook, or you can check it out eventually when we get the recordings up on starfishnw.org. So again, thank you, Ashley, for your time, and thank you all for tuning in from all across Northwest Arkansas.
Thanks, guys. Good luck.
Thank you.